Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we turn our focus to the crisis plaguing that is shaking the Democratic Republic of Congo, often considered as the heart of Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo, rich in resources but long plagued by conflict, is once again at the center of escalating tensions. The eastern region, where most of the fighting has been dogged by conflict for more than 30 years, since the 1994 Rwandan genocide, then saw calm before the resurgence of tensions by the M23 rebels in 2021. The invasion of Goma on Monday, the largest city in the North Kivu province and an economic powerhouse for the nation, has sparked fears of a broader regional crisis, raising urgent questions about sovereignty, security and stability. What are the real stakes in this conflict? Who stands to gain and who risks losing the most? What role should the regional, notably the African Union, regional bodies and the international community play in preventing further bloodshed? Join us as we break down this unfolding situation in the western or eastern part of the African continent, notably in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with top analysts, our experts of the day and voice from the ground. This is Talking Point. Do stay tuned. Hello Africa and the world, thank you for always trusting your Pan-African channel For You Media Africa. It's always a pleasure to be in your company. And in this edition of Talking Point, like every other day, we focus on matters pertaining to the African continent. And this day we are channeling our focus on, or better still, in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, with the diplomatic spot between, the DRC and Rwanda, pertaining to what's happening in the eastern part of the African country. And of course, our panel of experts this day unfolds, kick-starting with the Great Lakes region. I'm being joined by Modeste NKURIKIYIMANA, who is joining us all the way from Rwanda in his capacity as a senior journalist and a Great Lakes political expert. Thank you, Ms. Lisser, for joining us this day.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Modeste, are you with us? Please, can you unmute your mic so we can hear you?
I'm saying, what do you mean? To mute what?
Thank you so much. Just to say, this is your first time joining us on Talking Point on board For You Media Africa. Meanwhile, all the way from the United States, we're equally been joined by Dr. STANLEY FONGOD in his capacity as a Pan-Africanist economist and a FINTECH expert. Thank you, Ms. Lisser, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for having me, and thank my co-panelists for joining us as well.
Like we mentioned in our preamble, today we're asking ourselves the question, what is at stake in the Democratic Republic of Congo following, the invasion of Goma, one of the key cities in the North Kivu province and at the heart of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, amidst the escalating tensions in that part of the African continent. We recall that numerous entities have called for a cessation of hostilities in that part of Africa, and notably the African Union, the United Nations Security Council, amidst others. And as we speak, following a session by the UNSC, the United Nations Security Council, on Tuesday, the representative of the DRC gave the UNSC an ultimatum for them to be able to address the crisis. If not, failing to do so, other measures will be taken into consideration. So I'll kickstart with you, Modeste. Now, you're on the ground, you're a senior journalist, and you have, been a Great Lakes, Great Lakes political analyst, and you understand what's happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Could you paint for us, or for our audience, a vivid picture of what's happening in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and what are the main reasons behind the invasion, of Goma in recent times?
Thank you very much. Actually, what is happening in Goma is that the city has been captured, seized now by the rebels of the movement, military movement, which is called M23, and it has a political wing, which is called AFC, These are the rebels which originated from the military movement, which was called the CNDP, that was created in 2005. These are the people who were actually fighting for their rights because of their parents have been kicked out of their country and having refuge in the Great Lakes belt or the Great Lakes countries like in Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and even in Burundi. Those are mainly and the majority Tutsis, the people who were actually kicked out of the eastern region of Congo by the time of the former Rwandan military when they failed and chased out of Rwanda or fled in DRC when the Rwanda Patriotic Army were liberating Rwanda. This is how those people also now, those Tutsis who were dwelling in the eastern part of Congo, were also killed by the genociders, those who were perpetrating the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. When they reached in DRC, they started killing the same Tutsis or the people of the same tribe, and then they fled in Rwanda. The movement then started fighting for their liberty or for their right to come back in their country since 2006. They were the rebellion was then kicked or failed the war and to find a refuge in Uganda. It was in 2012. So they came back in 2021. So the battle started then back in 2021. They seized several entities or territories in northern Kivu, and finally, currently, I think in this last week, they finally captured the city of Goma. That's actually what is happening now. And they were fighting against the FRDC. Those are the loyal military of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Along the FRDC, there were the FDLR. Those are those who failed or who the military group, which even have been qualified by the UN of being terrorist. They are there actually operating in DRC, planning to topple the power of Rwanda or the regime of Rwanda. So the FDLR, the FRDC, the South African contingent, Burundians, and other local militias who they actually all gathered along behind or beside with the government, and they are all fighting that movement. But finally, the movement end up capturing this city. Along also, again, the government forces, there were European mercenaries who were all finally captured. And today, from this morning, 208 European mercenaries, those are from Russia, from Belarus. They were today given the green light to go back to their countries. All of them traveled the border of between Goma and Rwanda. They are heading now to the Kigali International Airport for them to go back to their country. So that is the situation, the current situation in Goma. And unfortunately, during this war, the government forces and their coalition have been accused of misbehaving towards the citizen. And when the rebels arrived actually in the city now, they are being applauded, or the population is singing for them like they are now liberated by these rebels, even if the government have been qualifying them like the terrorists. But now they have really, like, according to numbers and the statistics, it has been said that they have already occupied, and that from the time they have been fighting, they have now occupied a territory in northern Kivu. They now occupied a territory which is around 80% of the northern region of Kivu in that eastern province of the country.
Thank you so much, Modeste, for painting for us, our audience, that beautiful picture of what's happening is what as well a sad incident of what's happened in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But as we unfold in today's conversation, we shall be, trying to see how we can bring to the table ways through which these ongoing tensions can come to an end. Now, moving forward with you, Dr. FONGOD, you listened to your co-panelists who painted a picture of what's happening all the way there in the Democratic Republic of Congo, simultaneously with the tensions between DRC and Rwanda. But we should equally note that he cited that there are key players, notably at the local and at the international level, that are both involved in this crisis. Now, I mentioned in our preamble that we saw the United Nations Security Council that have been called by the representative of the Democratic Republic of Congo to be able to, address what's happening in the country. And we saw a statement released by the African Union calling for a cessation of hostilities in the DRC, and that has been the trend across Africa, with numerous leaders, condemning what's happening in that part of the African continent. But at this particular point, how does this invasion of Goma and the escalation happening in that part of Africa fit into, the broader history of the tensions that have been plaguing the DRC since after the 1994 Rwandan genocide?
I think that
actually,
proceed, Dr. FONGOD.
I think that there has to be a way in which we look deeply between the conflict that is actually happening between DRC and Rwanda, and to understand that this is actually a conflict that is rooted in its historic nature, and we have to be able to find ways in which we can be able to go back and actually sit down, have these parties, especially the Tutsis who are in the DRC, because those Tutsis in the DRC are absolutely considered to be people in no man's land, and that in itself has everything to do with the colonial era. What Congo is actually facing right now is just the remnants of what the colonial era and the post-colonial era actually did to DRC, and in most part with the Rwandan genocide, that in itself was basically all the footprints, the fingerprints, of the colonial era. Secondly, I am not too sure at this particular point in time what the United Nations has to do with this, and the reason for that is because there are a lot of things that the United Nations could have done before now that the United Nations have not done, and there are a lot of things that countries like the United States, countries like China, countries like Russia would have done long before now, and none of those boys in the West or in the East have been able to accomplish anything. And the reason for that is because of what Rwanda represents, of what DRC represents. DRC represents everything that basically foils the Western economy. It represents what foils the Eastern economy. And so a solution to the conflicts in the DRC will not come from outside of the DRC, would not be engineered from outside of the DRC. I think that time has come for those who basically are dying to have the will to stop dying. And this is in relationship to whether you are part of the Tutsi rebel groups, which is basically comprises of the M23, or you are one of the other 126 militia groups that is, clustered throughout the DRC in all of the mining areas in the DRC. Whatever it is, there has to be a way in which we understand fully that in an effort for us to be able to bring any kind of peace into the DRC, and hopefully, Rwanda, the president of Rwanda, who is a Tutsi himself, and the president of DRC, there has to be a way in which both parties sit on the table and have meaningful resolutions that is respected by both parties. M23 basically came into existence as a result of, this disdain they had because of the failed agreements, that was in March 23. That's where the M23 thing came about, I think 2009. So there has to be a way in which we maintain agreements. We understand fully that the most important thing is for us to leave. I understand that there's a huge appetite in Rwanda, there's a huge appetite among the Tutsi groups to be able to deal, especially with the part of the Hutus who were responsible for the genocide, some of which are still living, and there's a huge appetite to basically eliminate them as much as they can. I understand that, but we have to look at the broader picture. We have to fully understand exactly what we want, how we want things to be done so far as our humanity is concerned. And I think that time has come for us to find ways to heal. Time has come for us to find ways. If we have to be able to prosecute those who were responsible for the genocides, it's important for us to do so without pulling everybody in the mix and creating the level of carnage we see happening like in Goma today.
Indeed, Dr. FONGOD, I mean, well, like you mentioned earlier, you know, there is call for all the parties that are involved in this conflict to be able to sit down and chart the way forward out of this crisis. Now, Modeste, you mentioned earlier that the crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo has seen the implication of numerous neighbors because, you know, during the Rwandan genocide, we had countries that fled to the other parts of the region. And with the resurgence of conflict in the DRC, we equally saw Congolese that left the eastern part of the country and moved to other parts of the sub-region. With that said, we know that this conflict may have, you know, regional and geopolitical impact. With looking at that aspect, what role do neighboring countries like Burundi, you know, Rwanda, Uganda, and others play as far as this crisis is concerned?
What I think, this issue will only be sorted out by the DRC, because it is a DRC issue with DRC citizens having their president. Simply and only the leadership of the Democratic Republic of Congo can solve out this problem. How does Rwanda get involved? Rwanda has been accused. Actually, if I go back into in the history, a very current history of this issue, when these rebels were defeated, they fled in Uganda. But currently, when the President Tshisekedi was given an opportunity to lead the country, himself went to negotiate these military who were in Uganda. They were in Uganda in military camps. Himself went there to negotiate for them, for he was like maybe fearing that once he get on power, without having or have had a relationship with the military, that maybe he would be considered, he will be considered weak by the former or the previous president, that is Joseph Kabila. So finally he went there and negotiated them, and he took them with their general Machenga. They were taken from Uganda. Himself took them in DRC. When they reached there, the rebels, those who are eager, planning to topple the power or the regime of Rwanda, then negotiated him, and finally they showed they actually convinced him that they are the best, that they will help him secure the region. But again, there is an agreement that they signed with him that they will then help him become stronger in this Great Lakes region, but that he also will help them to topple the regime of Kigali. So finally, that's how he ended up neglecting and rejecting the M23 in the forest, in the volcanoes areas where he left them. But there is even a record document that he took them in Kinshasa for a period of 1 year and a half, when they were planning of how because he knew they were strategic and very strong militarily strategic. So finally, he ended up sending the military to be killing, to kill them in the forest where he left them when the delegates were with him in Kinshasa planning for everything. So those rebels who are FDLR, who used to actually be invading Rwanda, shooting in Rwanda, finally they get together with the FRDC, those are the loyal military. They even started shooting in Rwanda, and that's by even killing those, cycling those military, these M23, by to kill them, to exterminate them, solve them in the forest, in the volcanoes where they were located. So finally, that's how the war or the rebellion was again resumed, because they were taken in DRC by himself, President Tshisekedi, when he was expecting them to be his best military, as they have been showing their performances when they were still in DRC before fleeing in Uganda. That is before 2013. So Rwanda was just involved in this issue by the narrative of the FDLR, because you can imagine and ask yourself, how come these rebels who were actually refugees in Uganda, who were taken in Uganda by himself, the president of DRC, now they are fighting himself just because they discovered he was to finish them, he was to kill them, while he was the one who took them from Uganda. So finally, because the FDLR were targeting Kagame, were targeting Rwanda, they signed an agreement with the DRC to then fight Rwanda, and that is what's happening. So that's how Rwanda was involved. And unfortunately, neither the African Union nor the Western or the UN, they never even come back to the issues, the real issues. The real issues, what are they? The real issues is that the rebels, the M23, their noble cause of living is that they were fighting for their right their existential right, their freedom to also live. True. You know, even if they have been defeated several times, I think it's 2 times, 1 time by the way. What they were pleading for is that they were yelling enough with having their parents dispatched in this region, while their lands were occupied by the FDLR. That was their issue, and still now that is the problem, even if they were also adding the issue of the country being misled. So Rwanda now is being involved in the case because the president himself, Tshisekedi, went in Uganda, resumed the M23 who were no more active, and when he wanted to then kill them, when they get up and having power also, they started fighting him, and finally, instead of accusing Uganda, where he took them from, they then started accusing Rwanda of supporting the rebels while they came from Uganda, and he is the one who actually took them from there. That it's known, and it's really obviously known, that these rebels were in Uganda. So the way of solving actually this problem is completely defeating the terrorists or the genocidaires, those who perpetrated the genocide against Tutsi in 1994. Secondly, it's never and no more neglecting nationality to these people, because actually they were even the first dwellers or inhabitants of the eastern region of Congo, because when you go there, all the names of rivers, all the names of mountains, even these volcanoes of the North Kivu, their names are in Kinyarwanda. These people, of course, they were under the Rwandan regime by the time of kings. When the time of colonialism, when they were separating or dividing the Africa for their own interest, that's how some Rwandans were given to the specific countries. Like there is a part of Rwandans who went in Uganda, there is a part of some who left in Burundi, and another big part who left in the eastern DRC, and even the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was then Congo, wasn't even reaching there where they were dwelling. It was completely the land that was dwelled by Hutus and Tutsis, and of course some people who also came or who were there being part of like Uganda. That's how it was. So the problem is that now these Tutsis can be said or neglected nationality, while they are even in the camps which are known from 95 in Rwanda. The camps are known, they are in Rwanda, they are known, and these people do not have lands in Rwanda. So that is the challenge. And when the M23 is actually manifesting the power they have, That is how the rest of the world used to accuse Rwanda of backing them. Simply because saying, you know, where can they get this power? How can they be powerful to this level? But please, they are powerful simply and only because they are fighting for their existence. In the camps, you can imagine, a refugee is given only $1 for the survival of the whole month. You can imagine somebody to live a whole month using only $8 US. So these people, for they no more have, it's like they have yelling enough being out of their country. Their country is rich, this DRC, but the people who actually even came very far from their land, who don't even know to pronounce the names of their land, of this eastern region, can now obviously and officially neglect them and be chasing them from their land, saying that they are Rwandans. And the other challenging issue that the rest of the world, even the UN, do not never consider, is that when they are chasing the Rwandophones, the people speaking Kinyarwanda, they actually used to say that they are Rwandese, simply by the fact that they speak Kinyarwanda. But the problem which is there is that the Hutus who speak Kinyarwanda do not get chased from eastern region, which shows that even this war is not between it's not motivated by DRC, but it is the DRC being working for the FDLR who wanted to topple the regime of Rwanda, and it's a corrupt issue. The people have been corrupted on this issue because you can't tell me why. Nobody wanted to question the reason of this M23 fighting. They will always be talking about Rwanda, it's Rwanda, it's Rwanda, instead of asking them, why are you fighting? The only reason they used to actually be presenting is that they are fighting for their living also matters, and they are Congolese, they do not have a land anywhere else. And what shows that it's a tribalistic issue is that simply these Tutsis, these people who actually used to have cows, they are the only ones being killed in Congo, and they are the only ones that the whole Congo accuse of being Rwandans. Those are people living in Beni, that is in the further northern part of DRC, in the territory of Beni. Those are Banyamurenge, those are living in the southern part of DRC. And these Tutsis living in the eastern part of DRC. You will see all the people who actually met them there. They are the ones fighting them. And the government does nothing against the segregation which is done against these people. A Tutsi can be lynched, can be killed widely. Honestly, a Tutsi can be killed and burnt and eaten. Nobody will really intervene. Neither the MONUSCO who are there, who have even been there since 1999. They have done nothing. Because you will see another point that shows that there is a political issue which is not really, actually nobody wants to solve out completely this problem. The MONUSCO have been in DRC in 1999 under the mandate of actually securing peace. But unfortunately, every year was born a rebel movement. And those rebel movements are still there. There are, the reports of the UN has actually presented more than 100, 200 rebel movements, which does not even have a reason or a presentable reason to exist. But the only movement that can be fought is the M23. And when you go there, I would really ask, like, if maybe journalists would try to go there for investigations. The zones, the territories which are controlled by the movement are safer than the territories which are actually even under the control of the government forces. That is, we have been really going there for several times. They are the safest areas, but in the northern part, there is a terrorist movement operating there, which is called ADF. Those guys used to kill people every time. And unfortunately, there have never been an operation or a nationwide or a regional whatever like it's being done against M23 to work against those fighters. They are actually even invaders from outside. They are from Uganda. There have never been an operation or a coalition to fight them. But you can see the whole world now can really put together their energies to fight this M23 simply because they are known of being of securing the regions. And maybe once they secure the region, even these MONUSCO, these UN forces who are there for no reason and they are actually not productive, maybe they are fearing to go back to their home and they will be like failing. Because you can't imagine, you can't really testify or give reasons why the UN forces have been there from 1999 and instead of securing peace, there is naissance or the movement, the rebel movements get born every day, created every day in every corner. But again, something that was revealed is that they work closer to them. They work collectively to gain, to dig minerals and, of course, grow their businesses. And they have really never solved the security issues of DRC. But now that the rebels, the M23 have been there, all the territories that they have liberated have really been secured and safer than even where the government forces are working.
Okay. So, Modeste, I'll be coming back to you. It's true that was a very elaborated response. I'll be coming back to you after getting your co-panelists for us to pick up from where you stopped. Now, Dr. FONGOD, you listened to Modeste as far as that is concerned, but let's look at the economist aspect of it. You're an economist as well. What are some of the implications, of this ongoing crisis for regional trade, regional diplomacy, and even security cooperation?
I think that if you're talking about regional trade, to me, there's nothing to talk about, because how do we begin to talk about regional trade when people are basically fighting for their lives? Goma is under siege. The whole entire region has been under siege. There is a destabilizing effect, not just in the DRC. This has spread everywhere. You're looking at places like Central African Republic, all right, which basically has no functioning government. It is what it is. And the whole entire region is basically going through hell. So the issue about trade in this region basically does not hold sway. What I would rather propose is this, that we need to be able to find ways in which on the economic front, we have to be able to take companies like Apple, all right, and their cronies. These are the companies that must be able to be pulled out into the international court. We have to be able to sue the living daylight out of these companies. And the primary reason is because there are three primary minerals that these companies are absolutely interested in. First, we have cobalt. Second, we have tin, titanium, and probably tungsten. All right, so these are the three minerals that are extremely very important for the manufacturing of iPhones, MacBooks, and electronic devices. If you look at a country like the DRC, is responsible for about 70% of the cobalt production around the world. All right, and cobalt is a key component in lithium batteries, and there's no way we can talk about all of these cell phone technologies if you're not talking about lithium. All right, so if you look at another mineral like titanium, tin rather, tungsten, and titanium, those are very good for capacitors, resistors, transistors. So we have to be able to find ways in which we are able to bring these things into we need to fight them. If we can't, then it will be extremely very difficult for us to be able to talk about any kind of issues on trade. And the reason for that is because, as far as I'm concerned, trade is not just about if we can have cross-border trade within these regions. No, we need to be able to find ways in which we solve the issues of why there is conflict in the first place. And we need to be able to do so by holding the companies that are primarily responsible for bringing this level of chaos in the area. Without which, I don't think that there's anything that will be meaningful. I think that Amnesty International, we have to be able to make sure that those people are absolutely held responsible. I think that Apple, Tesla, Google, Dell, they have to be sued for child labor, that is taking place in the DRC, especially in the cobalt mines. These are the things that are bringing all of this madness into place. And the reality is, if we can just be able to start, if we can start with this and stop the flow of these minerals outside of the DRC, then we will curb the amount of money that is coming in for funding into these endless wars. Because the more Congo fights, the richer companies like Apple will be. And this includes Samsung and everybody in between.
Okay, Dr. FONGOD, given you have cited this already, you mentioned that the international corporations and international interests that are falling or benefiting, from the ongoing crisis. With that said, how can the country, given that we're looking at ways to which a nation could be able to get out of this set crisis, how can the country, that's the DRC, protect its key facilities, protect its minerals, its infrastructure, in the wake of all these tensions that are going on in the country?
You can't, and I think, and I'm still going to say this, I think that the only one particular, the key component in every negotiation that needs to take place will be the president of Rwanda. It doesn't matter what anybody says, and the reason for that is because the president of Rwanda has so much power, and especially because of the M23. These are Tutsis, all right? These are people who they have gone through hell. I understand primarily, what my co-panelists were saying, but the reality is that if you look at the two Congo wars, one in 96 and one in 98, both of them brought about a lot of destabilization, all right, in the DRC. And all of that was because of the geopolitical nature of which those regions were going through. Okay, one backed Laurent Desire Kabila, I think that was the most famous one, and then the other one was back the second war, after Kabila basically distanced himself from Rwanda. All right, that's what happened between 1998 and 2003. We have to be able to get Paul Kagame, all right, to come to the table. I think that if there will be anyone who can be able to speak for and speak with the Tutsis in the DRC, people who basically are considered to be, in their homeland, who are, I think that my co-panel said so much about it. A Hutu in the DRC is not looked at the same disdain like a Tutsi. It's just the way it is. This is well documented. And if you can have somebody like Paul Kagame shows up in the DRC to have conversations with and for the Tutsis in the DRC, we will basically have a way of putting an end to this whole entire madness. But the reality is, you cannot marginalize a bunch of people, and basically regulate them to the background without allowing them for, to be able to self-express themselves for their own liberty. A time comes when the sound of an AK-47 will not be able to scare anyone from freedom. And that is what M23 basically stands for now. So it doesn't matter whether you crush M23 today, M23 will always rise as long as the Tutsis in the DRC, all right, are not considered by other Congolese to be Congolese. That's where the main issue is. So for that to happen, you have to be able to get somebody who has been in that midst, who has the same ethnicity as them, and who is the leader of the DR of Rwanda, to be able to come to the table and speak for and with them. That is the better bargaining chip on the table to be able to bring an end to the conflict that is taking place in that region. The notion that we have to sit and expect somebody from outside of the continent to come and speak, or some other part of the continent, when the issues are right before us, I think that we need to be able to consider humanity first before whatever level of pride that we want to carry. Let's think about our humanity first. And if we can do that, Rwanda can sit. If Rwanda sits and DRC sits, those are the two leaders that really can put an end to this level of madness today.
We shall be coming back to, depict or understand the humanitarian consequences related to this ongoing process. Thank you so much, Dr. FONGOD. Now, back to you, Modeste. From where we picked up, you listened to your co-panelists, and of course, it's worth noting that these crosses do have an impact on not just, the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but equally touches all parts of the Great Lakes region. Look at the greater picture. Could we say that this recent spark of tensions ongoing in the Democratic Republic of Congo could force the DRC government, the government of Kinshasa, to be able to go to a negotiation table or a dialogue table with the M23 rebels?
It would because, honestly speaking, the Democratic Republic of Congo is losing. Yes, the president himself have denied the rebels. He has rejected completely them to sit down and negotiate with them. They have really showing they have power from their beginning, but because the president looked like inspired by the FDLR, those people who actually promised him to topple the power of the regime of Kigali and maybe build something that we don't know, he always opposed. He always have an extreme position of saying that he will never and ever sit for negotiation, which is actually looking or standing wrong. But now, I fear that the rebels themselves will somehow also neglect the negotiations, because through negotiations, it's where they have been defeating them. Like for the first time in 2012, they seized, they captured Goma. When they captured Goma, these so-called international organizations, or international whatever, they then shouted, "Oh, you guys, you need to go out of Goma," but under the promise of negotiation. And to put it into a proper perspective, in 2012, they captured Goma after the negotiations that were not being implemented, and those negotiations were done on the 23rd March 2009, and that's where they actually have their name. When the resolutions were not implemented, that's how they again went in the bush. They fought, then they also seized the city of Goma. When they captured the city of Goma, which is actually the home world of it's like it's where all these mercenaries and international organizations actually operate for the sake of protecting their businesses that they do with all other militia groups. They didn't want the M23 to live in that city. Then they asked them to go out, so that they can then, so that the government can then go for the negotiations. They agreed. They withdrew from the city. They went very far from that city. Their delegates went in Kampala, that is the capital city of Uganda, for negotiations. But finally, that's how Tanzania, it was under the regime of President Kikwete, who was also, due to his business ambitions, was of course cooperating or having their own interests with the DRC. They then sent, surprisingly, military operations from South Africa, of course, because of their demagoguery or demagogic businesses. They sent military and they kicked them out of the country. And finally, what they were even negotiating for in Kampala, I repeat, the negotiations were under process in Kampala. And they went to fight them at the field, and that's how they defeated them. It was a very big, a very huge coalition that actually, I can say, agreed with those people who perpetrated the genocide in Rwanda to topple the regime, the current regime, which is even maybe outshining some of the leaders around here. So now I fear that the M23 will again commit the same mistake of leaving the city in the name of negotiations. Because from the first day that they captured the Bunagana, it is it's a city in the neighboring of Uganda, they were calling upon negotiations. They captured several cities, several centers, several villages progressively, but finally the East African regional forces asked them to withdraw, for they were convincing the rebels that they are going to convince Kinshasa for negotiations. That's how Rwanda negotiations started. But from that area, that very beginning of the negotiations, Kinshasa, instead of negotiating with those people fighting him, fighting for their rights, he has officially said that he will never sit with these rebels, injuring them, naming them that they are terrorists, and everything. By negotiating with Rwanda, Rwanda then itself, because Rwanda was having the issue of the FDLR, every time that they go in Rwanda, it is Rwanda which is invited. And when they are in Rwanda, Angola, Rwanda simply talk about the FDLR, because for Rwanda says that the rebels does not concern Rwanda. It's a Congolese issue. It's up to you guys. Go and deal with your own problems. So to keep it short, I think this problem will only, it actually even needed to be sorted out by simply Congolese. But as they don't have a will to sort out it completely, maybe it will be solved by the wars. Based on what I have personally heard from some leaders from DRC, I've been conducting interviews several times with the former Senate President Kengo Adondo and other many politicians, people from DRC. They have really confirming that the problem of the Eastern DRC will never be solved by the wars or the guns, but that simply and only negotiations will be providing lasting solutions. But unfortunately, those are what the DRC itself now is rejecting. Now the rebels are having almost 4 days that they have seized the city of Goma, but Kinshasa have even now rejected that they will never sit for negotiations. So I don't see how it will be done, because itself Kinshasa have rejected. It doesn't have a willingness of sitting with the M23.
Yeah.
The M23 themselves have had an experience of being misconsidered, undermined. Their parents have been neglected of nationality. It's now 30 years that they are in camps, refugee camps, where they are really surviving. The fellow friends and sisters, some of them have been sent in the United States for asylum or whatever. They are now, for a very long, imagine people spending more than 30 years outside of their country, finally being taken outside, very far from their country. So finally, these rebels are fearing that they will really finally lose the country, that they will no more be considered Congolese. So I think for them, when you ask them why can't you seize the fire, they tell you that now it's like the last war. They need to fight it to either exist or have their freedom in their country or die all. So I think the only way that would provide the lasting solution would actually be the negotiations. But unfortunately, we don't know if the Democratic Republic of Congo official or leaders or presidents will accept. And if they don't accept, what it seems to be is that the rebels then will progressively maybe liberate every area or every territory where their parents were living and maybe repatriate them, because yesterday they were actually singing the songs of liberation that maybe their children are liberating them. So we don't know how it will be, the lasting peace will be provided. But what we can see is that if not in negotiations, maybe under fire it will be gotten.
Indeed, and of course, that is the call of liberation, is a call for dialogue to bring an end to the ongoing turmoil plaguing the Democratic Republic of Congo. You said earlier on that the Kinshasa government might be hesitant in negotiating with the M23. Do you believe that, pressure from regional, like the African Union, groups like the East African Community and others could pressure the DRC to be able to negotiate and bring an end to the ongoing crisis?
It's very challenging, and unfortunately, even the African Union does not really, it has never even conjugate any effort to sort out this problem. Because when you see even in the missive or the communique that they publish,
yes,
they jump up. They never even talk about the root causes of the problem. And when you don't put a problem into a proper perspective, you can't uproot the problem. So it's like always they have a Western or an imported narrative. And this narrative of simply and only talking about Rwanda is just a narrative that the DRC communication team has created to simply talk about Rwanda, so as the problem sound like the problem being of Rwanda DRC, while it's a Congolese issue. And I don't think that since the African Union is still accepting or agreeing to talk and to communicate in the name of Rwanda DRC, then the problem won't be solved. The only way of solving out this problem is digging deep and know what is the root causes of this issue. Number one, it will take the whole world or the DRC itself to dissociate themselves with the FDLR, those who kill Tutsis and who actually disseminate the poisons of hating the Tutsis. And I understand their reasons. For them, Rwanda have conducted several projects, several missions of calling them to come back in their motherland. These have been done from the time Rwanda has been liberated. From 2003, there have been missions which were called Come and See, Go and Tell. That was actually calling these people who were taken into refuge, because civilians in Rwanda, in 1994, many Hutu people were taken by their former military by force outside of the country. Of course, they were willing that the minority, that was the RPF, that was liberating the country, they were like, once they reach the country, without having citizens, then they will miss the people to rule or to govern. Then that's how it will be facilitating their insurgents. And of course, it happened. They were located near the borders of Rwanda in DRC. They were then operating with their guns in the camps. That was not aligned with the international regulations, the international laws, stipulating that a refugee needed to be relocated or taken in a very far distance, like approximately, I think, 150 kilometers. But themselves were put into, like, I think, in 20 kilometers, and they were still and repetitively coming to invade Rwanda. That is actually was the reason of Rwanda to go in DRC and destroy Mobutu with those former Rwandan militaries, forces who were facilitated to invade Rwanda. So now, I think, now that the DRC need to understand that still it is cooperating with the terrorists, the genocidaires, who perpetrated the genocide against the Tutsis, I think the problem won't be solved. So the problem, and the very challenging one, is that those FDLR, they are powerful now, and they have already infiltrated the FARDC. Those are the forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is very challenging to dissociate them from the loyal forces. Some Rwandan dissidents even have already been in the parliament of Kinshasa. So it's very challenging. That is how they then finally poison and educate and emphasize everything that can really hinder the peace of Rwanda. So now that the issue has been that, I think there is a need of a Pan-African spirit, the Ubuntu philosophy, that can really teach these African people that they are friends. You can even imagine the Congo is a very big country. It has even very big spaces which are inhabited, but you can imagine they don't want the people, their citizens, to come back in their motherland simply because they are taught by these FDLR, these people who are fighting Rwanda. They are simply wanted to go under their ideology, to simply work under their narrative, their rhetorics. So I think it's very challenging, but if Africans should actually learn that they need to learn how to build than destroying themselves, how they can build development rather than simply serving the Western world, how they can unite instead of disuniting themselves, this region would be peaceful and much developing as the Western world. But unfortunately, we don't have those years.
Exactly, and of course we'll be painting a broader picture, linking what's happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo to the African continent, given we have seen countries that underwent conflict, crisis, but now live as peaceful countries, notably countries like Ethiopia and others. But meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Talking Point over your Pan-African channel for you, Media Africa, and you're watching us, on your various platforms, television, radio, listening to us on radio, and we're streaming live on our numerous social media platforms. Meanwhile, discussing the Democratic Republic of Congo with the burning issues in that part of the African continent. Now, to proceed with you, Modeste, you mentioned earlier on that the crisis has resulted, in a dire humanitarian need for aid in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. But what's happening in the Eastern DRC and the call for, cessation of hostilities, a call for an end to what's happening in that part of the African continent, what steps are giving you on the ground are being taken to address the displacement crisis that is, is adding day by day?
The only way to bring peace in that region, actually, it's allowing or agreeing with the M23 to inaugurate or to install peace, because themselves, the government forces, they used to be killing every day on their light. They kill civilians. It is obvious and it's known by everybody. Even these United Nations missions working in DRC have been testifying that it's on daily basis. They can burn a person in their light, kill him or her simply because of saying, no, this is a Rwandan, this is not a Congolese, and then they ban him or her in the city. Police people can be bypassing and everything. Like yesterday, they destroyed almost all the embassies in Kinshasa. They destroyed the embassy of Kenya, of Uganda, of even Burundi, which is even helping them. Simply, maybe they were accusing the Burundians of have not fulfilled their missions while they have paid them. It's actually the only way, generally, not even talking, the issue of Congo does not even concern these Tutsis. No, it's actually concern the whole country, because there is nothing, almost, simply there are, of course, natural resources, but there is nothing like government, like leadership, because when you see in every way, actually, the people, the citizens themselves, they see the rebels like their liberators, like their saviors. So from very long ago, in the absence of even M23, people used to be killed on daily basis. These people, these civilians, these robberies who were given guns, They always kill even their mothers, their sisters, simply for just for money, for everything. It's like there is nothing. There is nothing. For sure, the only visible and leadership that have provided peace in DRC, let's be honest, it's just these rebels. When you even see how they respect international human rights, you can imagine they captured these mercenaries who were actually killing, fighting them. But this morning, today on this 29, they officially sent them through Rwanda for them to go in their country. You can imagine they have captured more than 1,000. Now, I don't have the exact numbers, but you can imagine they are rebels. They have said they have captured the commandos, the special forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo. But now you can't see how they are politely and respectfully treating them. These are the simply and only liberators or leaders that the Democratic Republic of Congo deserve, because I think this African Union even should have discerned about these issues of the Democratic Republic of Congo, because wars were there from the time Rwanda withdrew from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think it was in 2001. From then, there are killings in every corner of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and those killings are not being done by these rebels. No. The Mai Mais, the Nyatura, the FDLR, and those actually, the catastrophic issue is that when the FDLR discovered they have been put under the red lines of being terrorists, they created their children under armed groups of their children who have the same ideologies, who actually were born in DRC. You can imagine from 1994, all the child born from these Rwandans who refused to return back in their country, they recruit him or her in the military, in the militia. So now you will hear several names of militia groups, but all of them are, the majority of them are Rwandans. They are simply having the ideology of hating Atutsi, but also having the plan of invading Rwanda. That's how, before yesterday, when they were even to be captured, when the rebels were closing or near the city, this FDLR and the other coalition, actually they have the specific groups which are still called the FDLR, but other ones, they have other wings which are not called the FDLR, but they are the same. They started shooting in Rwanda. They started shooting in Rwanda, whereas in Rwanda it was silent, there were no problem, but they shot in Rwanda. Their bombs killed almost, I think, 13 innocent people, civilians. And I think they were trying to provoke Rwanda to officially go or invade or go to officially to fight in that war. So to fight something accusative or something, a reason to accuse internationally Rwanda. And Rwanda did not went in DRC for that war because M23 themselves were having the power to really besiege them. You know, so for lasting solutions is that these rebels maybe will liberate or save the Congolese. Otherwise, there have really been no one trying to sit or to bring a solution, because even these United Nations missions in DRC, actually DRC, the MONUSCO, who are operating in DRC from 1999,
the United Nations.
It is the largest, this United Nations mission operating in Congo, it is the largest mission of the UN in Africa, you can imagine, but they have done nothing. When you see the forces that have been used against the M23, if they were used to neutralize the culprits who are actually killing innocent civilians on daily basis, on their light, actually Congo would have been a very peaceful land. You see, you can imagine only Rwandan soldiers, where they have been, it's where it is safe actually. The Rwandan missions have been in Mozambique. They have done something outstanding. They have been in Central Africa. They have really brought peace. In South Sudan, they have brought it. How come the United Nations missions never bring a peace anywhere? Wherever they have been, they never bring peace. It's obvious. They have been in DRC and nothing have really changed.
I guess that would be a topic for another debate.
Instead, madam, the rebels in DRC have been born or created like mushrooms. Every week, every day, every month, there is a new rebel movement, a new militia group. And these people in MONUSCO to fight, they only fight when it is the mandate, when it is the M23 coming. Why do they fight only M23? It's simply because they are known of being peace builders. Simply that. And once peace is brought, once peace can be set, I think you can hear what they can be losing. And something shameful is that currently in the UN Security Council, they were condemning of the M23 of have shot dead some UN mission agents.
Peacekeepers.
And I wonder, but they were on front line. How can somebody be shooting against you and maybe you will know and will not shoot against him? It is a very challenging issue, and the African Union is there. They can simply print and spread the communique accusing the rebels of fighting whatever. But why not going down and ask civilians how they can? I am sure if you ask civilians to vote between the FARDC, the loyal forces, and these rebels, I'm sure that they can vote for the rebels because they are the peace builders. It is obvious. It's obvious. I'm using that very obvious example. This morning, they sent the European mercenaries who were fighting against them. They sent them to their countries. You can imagine. They didn't want to kill them, but they were having that power. But they did it because maybe it would be, because they were surrendering. Whoever surrendered, they never kill him. What kind of militia, what kind of rebels have been that? Have you seen the rebels in Africa like them?
Of course, like you said, it is a Congolese problem.
Something outstanding that even the government have never done.
Exactly. You know, time might cut us short, but then I still have like 2 questions for you before we part ways on today's conversation. You mentioned earlier on that there is this, there is a wind blowing across the African continent with change, at the level of Africans being more conscious of what they are supposed to do to defend the African continent. With that said, we saw countries like Ethiopia, where we saw the tensions that were ongoing between, the Ethiopian governments and the Tigray rebels. But at the end of the day, through African mediation, they were able to get out of that turmoil, and the country lives with peace as far as that tension is concerned. Looking at the DRC, what examples, what lessons could be learned from what happened in Ethiopia, for instance, in trying to quell what's happening in the DRC at this point in time, because the crisis is actually escalating? Please, in a few minutes.
The crisis is escalating, and I don't think the leaders of some of the African leaders have missed where to learn from. No, it's not the issue. If it was to learn from anywhere, they should have even learned from Rwanda. Rwandan current leadership have liberated Rwanda, and the conflict or the genocide was being perpetrated against the Tutsis. But now, from the time Rwanda was liberated, Kagame have never accepted revenge. Himself is from the Tutsi tribe. True. He have never revenged. Even there are some militaries who tried to revenge, but they were shot on daylight. To show an example that when you want to build a lasting peace, it's better to unite people instead of disuniting them. The DRC itself now is neglecting the nationality of the citizens. It is citizens, please. So does it require somebody to learn from anywhere? No. It simply requires somebody to have a leadership spirit and know what to do. That's a very simple thing. And I think you can imagine himself knows that he is the one, I mean Kinshasa, or the president, His Excellency President Tshisekedi. He knows himself that he's the one who brought back the M23. They were actually desperately, I think, in the refugee camps in Uganda. He's the one who went there to bring back them. And actually his father, may he rest in peace, his father was himself working closely with the M23 when they were still rebels. He was agreeing that they are serious. When they were fighting the regime of Joseph Kabila, the one who preceded Joseph Tshisekedi.
His predecessor.
So himself knows, he knows what he's doing. And what I can really explicitly present is that he's serving the international community interest, because all of them, like for example, the UNHCR know these Congolese refugees are in Rwanda. They have been helping them from a very long time, you know, but none of them have really presented that these refugees are Congolese, because they have been chased out of their country from 1995 when the FDLR already were in DRC. You see, UNHCR, it's a UN wing, they know it. But none of the UN mission have sent delegates to go and check if really these rebels are coming from there. And if maybe they are not, if they say we are the children of the refugees in these specific camps, why not allowing them and then asking them to bring back their mothers and then see if the rebellion will remain? Actually, this problem is very infantile. It's very, it is one of the challenges, the problem, which can be easily solved. Simply, there is a lack of the will or the willingness of solving it. Because through these kind of wars, it's where some presidents, some demagogic leaders get benefits. It is obvious. The refugees are there. In Rwanda, there are actually, I think it's 5 refugee, specific Congolese refugee camps. 2 camps, 3 camps actually. 2 camps are located in southern province of Rwanda, 1 in western province of Rwanda, 2 in the eastern part of Rwanda. They are known. The UNHCR have been serving and helping them from 1995. So do we need to learn from Ethiopia? Do we need to learn from where? No, those refugees have been there, they are known, they need to go back in their countries, and the rebels are simply and only asking that the FDLR who are occupying their lands can be repatriated to their countries, or if not, if they don't want to repatriate or to come back in their country, Rwanda, the rebels, the M23 have been asking for them to also go in a camp, like Rwandan refugees. So as one day they can also go back, whatever, it's in the country or the DRC, to know what to do with them. But they have been asking for simply bringing back their mother, their parents who are surviving in the camps in Rwanda, in Kenya. I think Kenya now has more than 400,000. Rwanda have more than 100,000. Uganda have more than numbers. Some of them go every day in United States as refugees. United States knows that. But nobody wants to talk about that. And the African Union is simply blinding itself and simply calling people to go for talks which will only be involving Rwanda and DRC. Does Rwanda concern those refugees? Is Rwanda concerned by those Congolese? Why Congo itself, why African Union itself cannot call upon DRC to talk with their citizens, those refugees, or these M23, and ask them, what are you fighting for? And if maybe they discover they are Rwandans, finally it can be obvious. They can chase them out of the Congo land. But these people are known. Where they are born is known. Like the general who is actually leading these rebels, he's born from a known area. It's simply obvious, and there is no need of like comparing, because every problem has its specific and real problems and its specific roots. If people simply have the will to uproot completely and in a durable way the problem, I think it can be even solved out in only 1 week. But simply because we have been judged badly like Africans, it's like we have only the power to destroy ourselves and never the power to build ourselves. If there was simply a positive, a willingness, African Union should call upon countries that have Congolese refugees and ask them, how many do you have? And then present immediately the numbers to Tshisekedi and then ask them, please, these are Congolese, and these people, these guns, these rebels are saying to be from these refugees. So please investigate. Do they relate?
That is actually a way of charting the way forward.
They do not even relate, please, at least repatriate these people, and then finally we will see if these people, these rebels, will keep resisting. If they do that, it can be done even in hours, but they don't have that willingness. That's why they don't even want to talk about that. They are simply benefiting from that because, like Burundi, have sent troops there. And the troops being there, the money, it has been, I quote, it has only been done by the president. It is a president-to-president cooperation. It was not done through parliament.
Yes.
And yes, military
Modeste,
soldiers from Burundi have been surrendered.
I'm sorry to cut you.
I personally have interviewed some. They don't know what they are fighting actually for. You see? So it's simply the issue of Africans behaving demagoguery and simply targeting personal interest over national interest. And that's how they destroyed the Africa continent. I think Pan-African philosophy needed to be imbued or upheld and then see if it can really bear out something. Otherwise, we are simply talking and talking. The unions and whatever meetings will be done to end up to nothing. If people want to solve out the problem, let them go to the refugee camps or ask the president of the countries having the refugees and ask them how many do they have? Are the camps existing from when? Do they want to go back to their motherlands? And then finally they will ask the rebels, the M23, if they don't match with these refugees, then it will be very easy to kick them out, sorry. The other things is simply a matter of narrative.
So I've got one last question before we part ways. Modeste, yeah, it's true. There's a lot to talk about as far as this topic is concerned. Like you mentioned, the way forward, it should be, promoting the Ubuntu spirit. We just got information that the president of the DRC, President Felix Antoine Tshisekedi, boycotted the earlier announced meeting between himself and the president of Rwanda in Kenya. Now, with this latest developments, as it stands, you said earlier on that the crisis can actually be resolved, but all the stakeholders have to come to a dialogue table. In some 30 seconds, could you, paint a picture of how the Ubuntu spirit, I am because you are, the Ubuntu philosophy can resolve this crisis? Some 30 seconds before we close up. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Actually, if I can start from Ubuntu, because it would be the overall ruling or the overall law that we would be abiding with, and finally develop this continent of ours, this richest actually continent. The Ubuntu philosophy would actually be to ask if the Western world now can create a bloc and see how each country can develop, and when they are fighting actually Africa, they cooperate in fighting and destroying us. The Ubuntu philosophy would be the philosophy of thinking twice and thinking big and ask ourselves where actually come from these borders. The issue of saying, oh no, this is my country. anyway, I don't want to say that we can omit immediately the borders, but we can keep them virtually. That is the stupidity, the stupidity that we Africans used to actually have. The people have been scattered across the borders, not willingly, but because of the willingness of the Western people who were the colonial masters. They actually divided us when they were targeting their own interest for the sake of developing their countries. And now they are developed because they have successfully succeeded or achieved their mission of creating conflicts between us.
You should think of concluding, please.
The Ubuntu philosophy would be to unite Africa and see our union point instead of creating or working, serving the Western world by destroying ourselves. Like, for example, you will see people like in Uganda, there are people who were like actually Rwandans, but because of history, because of the colonial masters, the borders have set them Ugandans, and that's fine. In Kenya and Tanzania, you can meet the Maasai in Uganda, in Tanzania, and the same Maasai in Kenya, and it doesn't matter. You can see Tutsis in Eastern DRC, in Uganda, in Rwanda, and in Burundi. It doesn't matter. The only thing that would matter would actually be seeing how can we develop together.
Okay.
That's the Ubuntu philosophy that actually would be said. And for the case of the DRC president have neglected to attend for the meeting that actually was supposed to be held in Kenya, is an issue that will keep the problem at the same pace, actually. Why does he reject that? There have been a narrative that the current president of Kenya, actually, when he was in when Kenyan contingent were in DRC, Tshisekedi presented the money for the Kenyan president for them to fight the M23, just to fight.
Well, we are running out of time. We're running out of time. Modest, just some 2 words, then we can wrap up, please. Thank you.
Yes, the president of Congo did not want to go in that meeting because he judged the president of Kenya to be a friend of the president of Rwanda, and finally he considered it personal, and he think maybe they will ask him serious questions like the questions that Kagame used to ask him, because the last time Kagame refused to go in Rwanda because he was like, we can't keep talking and speaking on behalf of the M23 while the M23 are there. Please call them and negotiate or debate your issues. This issue is not for Rwanda, and that's how the problem or the tension have really started escalating. And if the president did not want to meet, then finally maybe the lasting solution will be brought by guns.
Thank you, Mansley. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Modeste NKURIKIYIMANA, who joined us all the way from Rwanda in his capacity as a senior journalist and a Great Lakes political expert. Thank you, Mansley, sir, for participating in today's edition of the program.
Thank you very much, Sharon.
Okay, I will equally acknowledge the participation of Dr. Stanley FONGOD, who participated in today's edition of Talking Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it's on this note that we shall be drawing down the curtains of today's edition of the program. We believe you learned a lot from today's exchange, and of course, why picking up from one of the words of our guest of today, the way forward should be peace and a dialogue. On that note, do stay in company in the rest of programs on 4U Media Africa. Bye-bye.